Thank you. Good morning, Ms. Miller, or good afternoon, sorry. Welcome to the Supreme Court Judicial Nominating Commission. Feel free to make any opening remarks you'd like.
All right. I would just begin by saying thank you for this opportunity. I'm humbled to be seated here, and I know that it's quite the undertaking, especially when you have such a qualified list of candidates with a variety of experiences. It's a bit like comparing apples and oranges, and I know that, or maybe it's more like threads and trying to figure out which thread or thread of thought might fit into that fabric of our Supreme Court. And I hope that as I answer your questions, I can hopefully show how my thread might fit in with that fabric. So I look forward to answering your questions, and I'll leave it to y'all.
Thank you for those comments. Commissioner Sanders, you're recognized.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Miller, for being here with us today. I had the privilege of reviewing your application and talking to many folks in the legal community about you. And uniformly, one of the things I heard was how bright you are.
Oh, how
so
nice.
What a wonderful reputation to leave amongst all of your colleagues. Having said that, I'm just going to assume that everybody that we are interviewing today is as equally bright as you are.
Yes, ma'am.
What other qualifications do you have that you think would make you an excellent Supreme Court justice?
I do think that I try and approach people with tact, also for respect for their positions, and I listen. I think that's one of a good trait that I do have as a sounding board, and often airing my own ideas off of others and accepting their feedback. I do believe that I know it's in my application, but I do have that experience as a mediator. So I have that experience sitting in a position of neutrality, and having to show that restraint of what I might want to either educate us on the law, because lawyers have a hard time sometimes being mediators, because there's that tendency to want to advise on law, but you have to maintain that role. And so there is some restraint that comes with that. I think I have that experience. I think that one of the things that may set me apart from maybe some of the other applicants is just the extensiveness of my career in the field overall of criminal law, in litigating it especially, that I've served on both sides, and I bring that experience in assessing those issues from both sides to that position.
Thank you for that answer.
All right, thank you.
Vice Chair Panuccio.
Thank you. I just want to try to understand the opening statement to your application. Your view is you would not move to the 6th District before the time of appointment?
I think obviously, I know that this Judicial Nominating Commission is probably well aware of the Bone decision, the Bone versus the 5th District Court of Appeal and Judicial Nominating Commission, that says that nothing would bar me from moving and changing residency, because residency is determined at the time of appointment, not at the time of nomination. I think my argument is, I've made this argument, I believe, with when I was applying for the 5th District Court of Appeal position, and I was interviewed by that commission, that it was at the time of appointment. And I do have strong ties to the 5th District Court of Appeal. I believe that my interpretation and my reading of that particular constitutional amendment, in line with 2022-163, and the way that they determine residency, does create this situation where we currently have two judicial district courts of appeals that are not represented in the current membership of that Supreme Court. I don't know. I think I would consider obviously changing residency if that was necessary. I do have strong family ties in the 5th District Court of Appeal, especially in the Ocala region and Marion County region. But I think my position in my cover letter is that I don't believe, based on the reading in pari materia of the legislation that created the Sixth Judicial Nominating Commission, or the 6th District Court of Appeal, to require that the selection must come from that particular region.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Nordby.
Thank you for your application. I don't have any specific questions.
Okay.
Commissioner Sammer.
Thank you, Ms. Miller, for your application and for taking the time to speak with us today.
Yes, thank you.
What challenges would you see would be sort of some of the principal things that you'd have to face in transitioning into a judicial role? Tell us a little bit about your personality, temperament, experience, whatever you think is appropriate. But what would be the biggest challenges you think you'd face?
I do think that there is, again, I know that I've tackled that somewhat with mediation, but it is that switching from that litigant role to the neutral role. I think that I can do that. Won't say that it won't be a challenge, but I know that I can sit in that position of neutrality. I think that is the largest thing and when you've litigated, it's exciting, and it's just a different dynamic when you're in a courtroom as the litigator rather than sitting in that seat of judgment. I think that might be just the largest thing. I don't know that there would be many challenges. I know that there are fields that maybe I'm not as experienced in, but I think I've always learned things quickly. I've picked up. I believe that I can master large topics usually fairly quickly by research. That's been a trend throughout my lifetime. And so I think that there will be challenges, but I do feel that I'm confident that I can, either through research or relying on colleagues to give me some advice or feedback. I think that my ability to reach out and to learn and to research and self-teach some, those will all compensate for anything that's a difficulty.
Thank you.
Commissioner Tate.
I have just two quick questions. I wasn't clear in your answer to Commissioner Panuccio's question. If you would move, if the governor determined that this applicant, if appointed to the Florida Supreme Court, had to live in the 6th. I understand your legal argument, but are you committed to moving if you were sent up for this position and the governor had a different opinion than yours?
Yes.
Okay. And the second thing, just for our benefit, I see in your application that you were put on probation for 3 months while at the public defender's office for being late to court.
Yes, ma'am.
That seemed like a long time for being late to court, and I wondered if there was any preceding history of issues that led to that sanction, or was that simply a one-off?
I think that I will say that recently I was diagnosed with a potentially late in life after my daughter was diagnosed with a dopamine deficiency. That one of the examples of that is time blindness. That is one symptom of that. It's a federally protected ADA disability, but it is one of those symptoms of that particular disorder. And since then, I know that I have had some issues with perhaps losing track of time, because it does not, for people with this particular deficiency, you don't sense the passing of time the same way as 80 to 90% of the rest of the population. I got screened because, again, my daughter was also similarly diagnosed recently, and it is inherited, and so that spawned me to go do that, and I've been on an effective treatment for that since then, and so that has helped tremendously. I will say that is one downside that I think I may have had some history of just of running behind at times, but since I've been on this treatment plan, it's been much better. I think I say that I have that, and that is a downside, but one of the upsides is, again, the ability to learn things quickly through focusing and mastery of those things, and also because I think differently than the other 80 to 90%, I think, more in a web-like form, that sometimes that enables me to see patterns or connections that maybe someone who is more neurotypical and thinks in a linear format might miss. And so that has caused me in certain situations in mediations where I can walk in and find a solution by connecting dots that maybe other people would miss. So I recognize that this may have been a challenge for me in the past. I'm treating it effectively now, and I think that has caused a great deal of improvement. And then also that I think that this same disability does give me some assets that I would bring to the bench, and that manner of thinking and connecting dots in different areas of law, and that is something that I've always been able to do throughout my career.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Syria?
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Miller, I have just a question about the application, and I apologize if I'm missing it, or if the explanation's in here. It looks like I see some overlap in your employment with the Public Defender's Office, your own firm, and the Albritton Law Firm.
Right. I had opened my own practice. I had joined, and we were sharing office space in the Albritton firm, and I shifted to there. We never fully incorporated, but we acted as sort of counsel at that point in time. I was hired on at the Public Defender's Office, not in a full-time capacity, but in a part-time capacity as a 3/4-time employee. And I had private clients through that firm. And so that's why I did the overlap, just so that I was clear. I didn't want, it was difficult to kind of lay that out in a linear form because there was such overlap between those two things. And
but
so
you did have permission for dual employment.
Oh, yes. And since then once I left the Public Defender's Office, I was sought out by by friends who was the head of the office at Regional Conflict Counsel to apply when they had a vacancy. So I applied for that. And Ms. Brower, because she does have such a large territory, it creates more conflict of issues, interest issues. And so I've been in full-time capacity with that firm since. So
Thank you.
And I do have, she did, in my hiring, I have a few cases that I'm able to phase out, and they just haven't reached
Still
that
going on.
resolution yet. But other than that,
Right.
yes.
Thank you.
So, okay.
Chair, I don't have any questions.
Commissioner Angelos?
In your mediation practice, for the most part, what types of cases do you mediate?
I mediated, and I'm not mediating now because
Is that a criminal law practice?
right.
Yeah.
But in the past, it was dependency. I mediated dependency cases, some termination of parental rights cases, as well as the dependency side, and then also the family law cases where it was divorces, child custody issues between pro ses, between represented people. I believe I've mediated at least one civil case, but I might be mistaken on that. It was not very many. I'd gotten my civil license, but I don't know that was put to as much use as the others. It's been a while since I've done that. If it was, it would have only been one.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right.
Ms. Miller, I have one last question of you that I asked everyone. Is there anything that is not readily apparent from your interview today or from your application that would give us any pause in sending your name to the governor?
No, not that I can think of.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else have anything further? If you want to spend a couple seconds to make any final comments, we'd be happy to listen.
All right. I would, if you don't mind. I can say that I am a seventh generation Floridian, and my family came here as pioneer families to Florida on both sides, and they came here. I know that to Florida with that survivalist, I guess, instinct and a pioneering spirit, and they came to Florida, I know, for the freedom and the promise that it offered, and it was wilderness when they came here. And I know it's that the sacrifices of those ancestors that came here to forge a future for themselves, in that process, they forged Florida's future and my own. And I know that it's their sacrifices that paved the way for my parents to be the first in at least, I think, 150 years to go to college in my direct line. And my dad then became an engineer for the Navy and served the majority of his career there, designing dive equipment to make our Navy divers' jobs safer and more efficient and easier. And my mother was a high school math teacher. And I know that it's their sacrifices that have helped me to find myself seated here today. I know that they were scratching English and political science from liberal arts colleges, but I know that I have them to thank for my analytical skills, for my scientific approach to things at times, and I know that they're very proud that I am here today and interviewing with this honorable commission. I will say that one thing, being so connected to Florida, you can even just look at the names of my ancestors on my Pitts family tree to know the love of this country and the appreciation for our founding fathers that they have. They begin with my great-great-grandfather as George Washington Pitts, and then William Henry Pitts, and then Benjamin Franklin Pitts as he first came here. I think that passion and that patriotism for our country was passed down through the generations, and it's been instilled, I know, in me. My great-grandmother Pitts, I think, encapsulated some of that love of country in a phrase that she had that was sometimes a mantra and sometimes a question, sometimes your mission statement, but she would say, have you made good use of yourself today? Or, I need to go make good use of myself. Or, wow, you made good use of yourself in doing this, or whatever the task was that you had achieved. And I know that my roots are deep, my love for the state and my desire to serve the people of the state is even deeper. And I am humbled to be sitting here, and I appreciate the time that y'all have taken to interview me and ask the questions that you feel are necessary to make this decision that you have before you. And I do humbly ask that you send my name to Governor DeSantis for consideration. And I hope you do so knowing that that each morning, if I am selected, before I prepare to do my job at that desk, that I'm going to be asking myself two questions. And one is, how can I make good use of myself today? And then the next is, how can I best serve today my state and the people of the state of Florida and the will of the people of the state of Florida? All right, and I thank you. I thank y'all for your time.
Thank you for being here today.